They called her mad. A 70-year-old woman walking into a fertility clinic, asking for another child. Not her first. Her second. Because 3 years earlier, she had already done the impossible. At 66, Marina Emmanuel gave birth. And now she was back. But this time, she wasn't alone. Based on a true story with fictional twists, this mind-bending, emotional sci-fi drama of love, betrayal, and sacrifice will keep you at the edge of your seat till the very end. Will Marina survive her final pregnancy? Will the twins be born free? Or will history repeat itself again? Let's dive into it and find out together. The sterile white halls of Mercy Horizon Fertility Clinic echoed faintly with the click of a single pair of worn heels. Heads turned. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Eyes widened, not because of her frailty, but because of the aura she carried. Like a ghost returning to haunt a world that had forgotten her. Marina Emmanuel, age 70, walked slowly, her back bent slightly, her gait unsteady yet resolute. Her once jet-black hair was now a halo of silver, wrapped beneath a floral scarf. But it wasn't age that caught people off guard. It was her presence. As though she carried secrets no one dared speak of. 3 years earlier, she had walked through these same halls, quietly, humbly, like today. Back then, her presence had caused even greater disbelief. Because Marina had been 66 years old, and pregnant. Now she was back. The nurse at the front desk, Miriam, leaned over to whisper to her colleague. That's her, isn't it? The woman who gave birth at 66. She's insane, the other whispered. She almost died the last time. And now she wants another child? No. No one said she wanted another. But look, she's not alone. Indeed, Marina wasn't. A tall man with skin smooth as marble stood silently behind her. He looked no older than 35, but there was something unervingly timeless about him. His face was calm, unreadable, like a sculpture that had seen generations pass by. He wore no jewelry, no watch, no sign of technology, just a fitted charcoal jacket and slacks that clung like armor. Dr. Solomon Baiko, head of the clinic, dropped his pen when Marina's file hit his desk. His assistant stood awkwardly at the door. Sir, she said hesitantly, you'll want to read this. When he opened the folder, his brows rose in disbelief. Marina Emmanuel, age 70. Request IVF consultation. Previous history: high-risk pregnancy at age 66. Delivered successfully. Now requesting secondary IVF. His breath hitched as he turned the page and found the most shocking part. Donor. Present. Consenting. In person. And beneath that, a signature. A single name written with a bold, unflinching hand. Imani. Send her in, Dr. Baiko whispered. Moments later, Marina sat opposite him, her hands resting calmly on her lap. Imani stood behind her like a statue, silent. You know what I'm going to say, Dr. Baiko began. That I shouldn't be alive, let alone fertile, Marina finished for him, her eyes twinkling. Yet here I am. He leaned back, arms folded, studying her. What changed, Marina? I had a dream, she said softly, of 2 children. One with eyes like night, the other like fire. They called me Mama. And I woke up crying. Imani finally spoke. His voice was low, rhythmic, too precise to be natural. It is not just her dream, Doctor. It's a prophecy. Dr. Baiko looked from one to the other. And who are you exactly? I am the father, Imani said. The room fell silent. Marina reached out, touched the doctor's hand, and smiled with the gravity of a woman who had lived too long to lie. This is my last chance, Solomon, she whispered. Help me do the impossible, again. Dr. Solomon Baiko rubbed his temple as he stared at Marina Emmanuel across his desk. The years had not been kind to her body, but her mind was sharper than ever. Calculated. Intentional. You say you dreamed about twins, he said, flipping through her chart, trying to find logic in something deeply illogical. And this man, Imani, is the donor? The father? Yes, Marina said. And you expect me to ignore every medical textbook and ethical guideline to implant embryos in a 70-year-old woman? Again. You didn't ignore them last time, Marina replied softly. You read between them. That answer brought back memories. She had come to him 3 years earlier, weeping, fragile, but resolute. She had tried every option, local healers, churches, even a dubious fertility agent in Kenya. All had failed. But her faith, that had not wavered. It had pulled her through one of the most dangerous pregnancies he had ever overseen. And now she wanted to do it again. Dr. Baiko leaned forward. You nearly died, Marina. We had to perform an emergency cesarean. You were in intensive care for a week. That baby, she was a miracle. But lightning doesn't strike twice. Marina's expression didn't change. That child healed me. She didn't break me. Imani stepped forward, finally speaking. We are not here to beg. We are here because this place, this clinic, was built for miracles. Isn't that what you once called it, doctor? His voice was oddly steady, eerily devoid of emotion. As though he'd studied human language rather than grown up speaking it. Something about him unsettled Dr. Baiko, but he couldn't say why. I don't even have your medical history, the doctor said, turning to Imani. You won't find it in any hospital, Imani replied. I was never born in the conventional sense. Marina shot him a warning glance, but the words were already out. Dr. Baiko raised a brow. What does that mean? Just that I don't get sick. I don't age the way others do. And I don't leave a paper trail, he said. Then how do I even begin to justify letting you donate genetic material to an IVF procedure? You won't need to, Imani said coolly. Because the embryos are already created. There was a moment of stunned silence. What? The doctor asked. Marina placed a small, refrigerated metal box on his desk. We used a facility abroad. Quiet. Discreet. These are blastocysts. Viable. Ready for implantation. Dr. Baiko felt like the floor beneath him shifted. You planned all of this before even coming here? We prepared, Marina said. Now we need a doctor who can do what others won't. He stared at the box like it might explode. This was no ordinary patient. This was no ordinary case. And something told him this would not end like the last time. He stood slowly, walking to the window. Kampala buzzed below him. Horns. Markets. Laughter. Life. Behind him stood an old woman whose body defied age, and a man who seemed not of this world. Implantation starts next week, he said finally, still staring out the window. But if I sense anything off, anything, you walk away. He turned to see Marina smile, but it wasn't relief he saw in her eyes. It was something closer to destiny. Miriam had always trusted her instincts. It came with working in a clinic where patients brought their deepest hopes and fears. Some came broken, others came desperate. And then there were those like Marina Emmanuel, people who arrived cloaked in riddles. But it wasn't Marina who gave Miriam pause. It was the man. Imani. He had that too perfect stillness, like someone who had never stubbed a toe or caught a cold. The way he moved, controlled, almost rehearsed, gave her chills. His gait didn't match his frame. His eyes didn't blink often enough. And when he smiled, it never reached his eyes. The moment the consultation ended and Marina was escorted to the private guest wing, Miriam made an excuse to go back to the doctor's office. She pretended to tidy up, dusting files and aligning pens. But what she was really doing was searching. And she found it. On the desk lay the printout of Imani's supposed donor consent form. But the ID number listed wasn't a Ugandan citizen ID. In fact, it didn't match any national format at all. Curious, Miriam opened her encrypted clinic portal and typed in the code. No records found. She frowned, then tried his name. Just Imani. Nothing. Not in Uganda. Not in East Africa. Not even the International Donor Registry. She leaned back, uneasy. Something was off. She knew she'd seen that name somewhere, Imani, but not in a patient file. It was something darker. Something more dangerous. Later that evening, she stayed behind after her shift, slipping into the restricted archives while the night staff settled in. She accessed a forgotten cabinet labeled Gov Hold Conf. It had been untouched for years. Most of the files were yellowed and dusty, relics from before the clinic's transition to private ownership. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled out a red file stamped in bold black letters. Project Genesis. Classified. Date: 1983 to 1994. Location: Uganda/UN Tech Division. Her heart skipped. There it was again, Imani. Not as a donor, not as a father, but as a subject. The papers described a covert bio-research program that involved genetic augmentation and long-term cryopreservation. The language was thick with jargon, but one section was clear. Subject I-11, Imani, showed rapid cell regeneration, resistance to known pathogens, and no evidence of aging markers despite accelerated biological testing. Subject stored indefinitely after incident at Lab B. She felt her hands go cold. Stored. Cryopreserved. She flipped the page, then stopped. A photo. Blurred, black and white, but the same face. Exactly the same. Not aged. Not changed. As though 30 years hadn't passed at all. And in a margin scribble, in a different hand, she saw something even more disturbing. Subject I-11 has shown an inexplicable affinity toward carrier M03. Consider termination if psychological bond develops. She scanned the list of carriers. M01, M02, M03, M03, Marina Emmanuel. Miriam staggered back from the cabinet, her breath shallow. This wasn't just IVF. This was an experiment that had never ended. And Marina, she wasn't just a miracle mother. She had been chosen. Or worse, engineered. Miriam knew she had to tell someone. But who? Dr. Baiko was already in too deep. And Marina, she had the look of someone who knew more than she was letting on. She closed the file and slid it back. For now, she would wait. And watch. Because something had been planted in this clinic. Something old. Something unfinished. And it had just begun to grow. The days that followed the embryo implantation were unusually calm. Too calm. Marina Emmanuel stayed in the clinic's private residence wing, a quiet suite on the 3rd floor with large bay windows and soundproofed walls. She spent most of her time seated by the glass, watching the city breathe and pulse beneath the morning fog. The nurses called her Serena behind her back, not just for her calm, but for her unsettling lack of emotion. Her pulse remained steady. Her appetite returned quickly. And according to Dr. Baiko, the implantation had taken better than expected. By all accounts, Marina was doing better than any 70-year-old woman had a right to during IVF. But no one knew what she was experiencing when the lights went off. It began the 3rd night after the procedure. Marina had fallen asleep early, aided by her prenatal medication. But at precisely 2:07 a.m., she jolted awake, soaked in sweat. Her fingers trembled. Her mouth felt dry. She stared at the ceiling fan as it spun slowly overhead, but what echoed in her mind was not silence. It was the sound of a child crying. Not a normal child. A cry that twisted, fractured, echoed like it came from both within her womb and from somewhere far away. A girl's voice, shrill and warbled, weeping beside a cradle, screaming not for milk or comfort, but for truth. That night, Marina barely slept another hour. By morning, she dismissed the episode as a side effect of her hormone therapy. But the next night, it returned. And this time, she heard a name. Anaya. The name slipped into her mind like a whisper carried on a cold wind. She sat upright in her bed, eyes scanning the shadows. And then, she saw her. A girl, no older than 15, stood by the corner of the room, dressed in white, an old hospital gown, faded and frayed at the edges. Her face was pale. Her hair matted with sweat. Her eyes were terrifyingly familiar. Marina opened her mouth to speak, but the girl raised a finger to her lips. "I remember," the girl whispered. And then she vanished. The following morning, Marina sat at the breakfast table, barely touching her food. Imani stood across the room, watching her like a sentinel. He never sat. He rarely spoke unless spoken to. She finally asked him the question that had been tormenting her since the second dream. Do you believe dreams can be memories? Imani tilted his head slightly. Some say dreams are echoes of what the body forgets but the soul remembers. Marina looked away. She said her name was Anaya. That made him pause. For the first time since she had met him, his expression faltered. A flicker of something, recognition, guilt, shock, crossed his face. She doesn't exist, he said quickly. You're tired. The treatment is affecting your mind. But I've seen her twice. I know her face. She's no one, Imani said firmly, too firmly. Let it go. But Marina couldn't. That night, she refused her sleeping medication. She sat awake with a notebook in her lap, sketching the girl's face from memory. Her hand moved with surprising confidence, as though it remembered details her conscious mind could not. By sunrise, the sketch was finished. Marina stared at the drawing. There was something haunting about the eyes. And a scar on the girl's temple. Small, crescent-shaped, just above the right brow. It was the same scar Marina herself had. The exact same one. And for the first time in weeks, her breath caught in fear. Because deep inside, beneath the layers of medical miracles and manufactured calm, a terrifying question began to bloom in her mind. Had she met this girl before? And if so, when? The files haunted her. Miriam could no longer sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, the face from the Project Genesis file would flash behind her lids. Imani's face. Unaging. Unchanged. Undeniably the same man now walking the clinic's halls as if he belonged there. But he didn't. He was a ghost from a file that was never supposed to be opened. The day after her discovery, she returned to work like nothing was wrong, but her hands trembled as she passed medication trays. She stared at Marina with unease, questioning every interaction they'd ever had. And Imani, he watched her too now. With that unnatural stillness. Like he knew. Like he was waiting. She needed answers, and she wasn't going to get them within the clinic. So she reached out to someone she had long kept at arm's length. Her cousin, Elijah, a freelance investigative journalist who had a history of poking his nose into government secrets. They met at a small chapati stand across the road from the hospital.
Hold on. Aren't we forgetting something? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. You can like and share this video too, as this will help us grow and encourage us to do more exciting stuff. Okay, let's get back to it.
This isn't a rumor, Elijah, she said, handing him the copied scan of the Project Genesis file. Look at the photo. That's him. That's the man inside right now with Marina Emmanuel. Elijah squinted at the paper. His eyes darkened. Where did you get this? Clinic archive. The classified section. The one that was supposed to be destroyed when the government privatized our operations. He whistled low. Project Genesis was real? She nodded. He's not human. Not fully. And Marina? Miriam hesitated. I think she was part of it. Maybe the last living carrier. And now they're trying again, with IVF. She already has one miracle child, but I'm starting to believe that was just phase 1. Elijah leaned closer. If he's who you say he is, he shouldn't even be alive. And if they've implanted new embryos using her, they may have created something even more advanced. God help us. Back at the clinic, Marina sat quietly in her room, still haunted by the visions of Anaya. She stared at the sketch she'd drawn. The face was so familiar, it hurt. But it wasn't just the resemblance that troubled her. It was the memory that had returned while she was brushing her teeth that morning. A hospital room. Monitors beeping. A child screaming as men in white coats strapped her to a table. And a voice, her own, saying, I won't let you take her again. Anaya hadn't been a dream. She had been real. A daughter. A memory forcibly erased. And Imani had been there. Why didn't you tell me? Marina asked him as he entered her suite that evening. Tell you what? About her. About Anaya. He stood frozen. I dreamed of her again. But this time, I remembered it. The lab. The screaming. You stood there and did nothing. I protected you, Imani said, his voice suddenly icy. That child was unstable. She was never meant to survive. You mean she didn't fit the experiment? Marina spat. Imani's calm cracked. She was a glitch. A danger. We saved what mattered. Your womb. It felt like a slap. The air left her lungs. I loved her, Marina whispered. No, you were programmed to think you did. That sentence ripped something deep within her. Get out, she said, trembling. Don't come back. He stared at her a moment, calculating. Then he turned and left. But Marina knew. He wouldn't stay gone. Not now. Not with new life growing inside her. The knock on the clinic's security entrance came just before midnight. It wasn't loud. It was patient, persistent. Miriam had just finished her rounds and was checking her phone when the call came in from the night guard. She almost ignored it, until she heard the guard's shaky voice. There's someone here asking for Marina Emmanuel. She says her name is Anaya. Miriam's blood ran cold. Put her on camera, she said, rushing to the security room. The monitor blinked to life. A girl stood in the shadows just outside the gate. No more than 16, maybe 17. Gaunt, dressed in a hoodie and ripped jeans. Her arms hung limp by her sides, but her posture was firm. Her hair, wet from rain, clung to her forehead. Her lips barely moved as she stared into the camera. But her eyes. Those eyes were Marina's. Wide. Stormy. Knowing. Miriam ran. By the time she reached the entrance, Anaya was already inside. The guard had let her through, unable to explain why. She just looked at me, he stammered. And my head started pounding, and I let her in. The girl sat on one of the waiting benches in the main lobby, unmoved by the cold white lights or the silence of midnight. When she saw Miriam, she stood. I need to see her, she said. My mother. She's sleeping, Miriam replied cautiously. You're Anaya. The girl nodded once. You were gone. I was erased, she said simply. What do you mean? I was the first child they made with her. She looked around. But I was imperfect. They said I was too emotional, too unstable. I remember the lights, the machines. I remember screaming. You remember all of it? I remember dying. The words chilled Miriam to the bone. But I didn't die. They just shelved me. Like an experiment that didn't work. But something in me, something of hers, didn't let me go. I clawed my way back. She lifted her sleeve and revealed the scar on her temple. A thin crescent, nearly identical to Marina's. Miriam stared at it, frozen. That mark, she whispered. Your mother has the same one. Anaya nodded. We were linked. I can still feel her. That's how I found her again. Miriam hesitated, heart racing. Why now? Anaya's voice dropped. Because he's doing it again. Imani. He doesn't love her. He doesn't even see her as human. She was designed to carry. And now he's implanted the next phase, the perfected generation. Miriam's lips trembled. The twins. They're not children to him, Anaya said coldly. They're keys. To what? To his survival. His dominion. He's dying. His cells are collapsing. He was never meant to live this long. But the twins carry everything he needs to reset his structure. Without them, he rots. Miriam's thoughts whirled. This is insane, she whispered. No, Anaya said, stepping closer. This is science unchecked. This is what happens when man plays God with women's bodies. With children. Miriam hesitated only a moment longer. Come with me. As they slipped into the elevator, heading for the restricted guest wing, neither of them noticed the flicker of motion in the CCTV monitor. One camera, just one, zoomed in on Anaya's face. And blinked. Not recorded. Watched. Imani was still in the building. Marina awoke before the door opened. Her senses had become unnaturally alert these last few days, perhaps a byproduct of her heightened hormone therapy, or perhaps something deeper. Maternal instinct mixed with trauma. Either way, the moment the lock clicked, she knew someone was there. But what she didn't expect, couldn't have expected, was to see the girl from her dreams standing in her doorway. Anaya, Marina whispered. The name wasn't a question. It was a memory clawing its way out of a black vault. Anaya stepped inside, slowly, like she was afraid the illusion would shatter. Her eyes searched Marina's face, looking for something, recognition, maybe love, but mostly, truth. You remember me, Anaya said. Marina nodded slowly. I didn't, but I do now. The girl crossed the room in 3 careful steps, her hands shaking. They told me you were gone, that you died during labor. But I always knew that was a lie. I could feel you, even when I was kept in the dark. Marina's voice trembled. They erased you from me, from my mind, but I knew something was missing. I knew. Anaya sat on the edge of the bed, looking more childlike than ever. He did it. Imani. He wanted you to forget. Said I was defective. You weren't, Marina said firmly. You were mine. Anaya's voice turned cold. I was phase 1. The test case. The glitch. And the twins. Anaya nodded grimly. They're the final version. Genetically enhanced, biologically optimized, infused with sequences extracted from my DNA. You're just the vessel again, Mama. He doesn't love you. He never did. A tear slid down Marina's cheek, but it wasn't sadness, it was rage. A woman who had spent decades searching for peace had found the ugly truth. She had been a pawn. Again. They're inside me, Marina whispered. Growing. Moving. Alive. They're not to blame, Anaya said gently. They're innocent. But he'll never let them be human. He'll use them. A sudden jolt rocked the floor beneath them. The lights flickered. Miriam burst into the room, breathless. He's here. He's overridden the power grid. Security's down. We need to go now. Another crash echoed. Metal clashing, walls groaning. It sounded like the clinic itself was fighting back. Marina stood, her belly already starting to swell more rapidly than it should have. Too fast, she murmured. They're growing too fast. It's him, Anaya said. He's manipulating their growth cycle. Accelerating it. He doesn't care what happens to your body, only that they're born soon. Marina's eyes hardened. Then we stop him. Tonight. But how? Miriam cried. There's a backup generator beneath the surgical wing. A failsafe from when the clinic was under government contract, Marina said, surprising herself with the knowledge. I remember it now. We overload it. And burn everything. You're pregnant, Miriam said. You can't survive that. I'm already not meant to be alive, Marina replied. But they are. The twins. They deserve a chance to live free. Without him. Anaya stepped forward. Then I'll deliver them. Here. Tonight. The 3 women turned as the door behind them hissed open. Imani stood there. His eyes no longer kind. His face no longer calm. Behind him, the clinic lights died. Only red emergency strobes remained. And in that pulse of blood-red light, Imani whispered. Too late. They're coming. The emergency lights pulsed red like a racing heartbeat, casting the walls in eerie flashes that made the once sterile clinic feel like a war zone. Every shadow seemed to twist and stretch, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Imani stood in the doorway, still as death. But something about him had changed. His once flawless skin was beginning to pale, almost translucent in places. Veins shimmered faintly beneath the surface, glowing blue with unnatural energy. His eyes, those cold, ageless eyes, burned with desperation. He was decaying. Step away from her, Anaya said, placing herself between Imani and Marina. He didn't even look at her. His focus was on Marina's abdomen, and whatever was now stirring within it. They're awakening, he said, voice trembling with awe. Do you feel them, Marina? Their hearts beat as one. Perfect. Designed. They're children, Marina replied, clutching her swollen belly protectively. Not your cure. I made them for you, he said, as though pleading. To redeem what we lost. To preserve you. Us. You didn't make them for me, she said. You made them to survive your own failure. Imani took a slow step forward. I'm dying, Marina. My cellular integrity is collapsing. They are my reset. My bloodline perfected. And what happens to them after you take what you need? She snapped. Silence. That was answer enough. Anaya grabbed a surgical tray from the counter and hurled it at him. Imani swatted it away effortlessly, but the distraction gave Miriam time to press the panic trigger behind the bed. Somewhere deep in the walls, the generator hissed to life. Only this time, it would not be saving lives. It would end one. Marina staggered as a sharp pain coursed through her side. They're coming, she gasped, nearly buckling. Too soon. Anaya rushed to her side. We can't deliver here. Is compromised. We need to move her. No, Marina said. We won't make it in time. Imani reached into his jacket and pulled out a vial, glowing silver. This will stabilize you, give you strength, let you finish the birth. Miriam snatched the vial before he could take another step. And what else is in it? A tracker? A genetic override? No. He stepped forward, and for the first time, he looked frightened. Don't do this, he said. I can't survive without them. You don't understand what I am. What I've seen. I'm not your enemy. You never had a heart, Marina said, voice weak but firm. That's why you need theirs. With effort that racked her aging body, she reached under the bed and pulled out a metal panel. Inside was the old generator override, something the government had installed decades ago and forgotten. She looked at Anaya. You deliver them, she said. You're not coming? No, Marina said, eyes shimmering. I started this. I end it. You finish what they tried to erase. Anaya wept openly. Mama! Let them live, Marina whispered, placing Anaya's hand on her belly. Let them be more than he ever dreamed. Let them be free. Miriam and Anaya worked quickly. In the chaos of a burning clinic and a dying man, two cries split the silence. A boy. A girl. Alive. Perfect. And then, the generator blew. The flames swept fast, swallowing everything. The lab. The research. The files. And Imani. And Marina. Gone. But the twins, Zubair and Zainab, were already far from the fire, carried in Anaya's arms, into the waiting dawn. Years later, in a quiet village north of Kisumu, two children played beside a stream. The boy could heal wounded animals with his touch. The girl could speak truths no one dared admit. They called their guardian Auntie Anna. But every night before bed, they kissed a faded photograph of a woman with silver hair and strong eyes. Good night, Mama Marina, they whispered. And somewhere in the stars above, a heart that was never meant to beat, pulsed once more.
We hope you have enjoyed this amazing story. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, as it'd help us grow and encourage us to do more. Also, feel free to drop a comment about what you've learned too. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye, for now.